culture has grown up around it.
I'm probably the only gambler who's not into Bitcoin. Maybe I'm just getting old.
I think that it was really hard back in the day. Like, so one of the things about being a technology writer is almost every person that you know has some sort of Bitcoin experience, like
good or bad,
when it got really exciting and weird and strange in 2013 and people were first starting to hear about it. It was like $28, you know?
Yeah.
There's like, I don't know, I probably know 2 or 3 people who were like, yeah, I'll buy 7, you know, and put it in a wallet and then just like, you know, walked away for 4 years and then came back in December and were like, oh, it's $80,000 just out of thin air, you know, like there's all those kinds of stories. And that's really, really fun. But I'm really interested to see where it goes. And I think mostly for the technology aspect of it, but I also think just we've gone through such an era of like shit apps and sort of like, you know, like Twitter, Facebook, all these big internet companies kind of came about. And then there was like the whole listen to my elevator pitch about this, you know, crummy dieting app or whatever, all this stuff. And it was just like, we've had a long run of sort of kind of boring innovation, so to speak. And this is something that's like, hey, like imagine a different form of money. Like, you know, imagine just this decentralized sort of like almost like anarchic vision of the future. And like that to me is just, at least from a cultural standpoint, pretty fascinating.
You just made the case for Snapchat stock when you're talking about the lack of innovation. So think about it. We've only innovated how many platforms over the last 20 years? Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat. None of them were created in the last 5 years. There is no... Like if you're doing a draft pick, like if I'm in basketball and I'm like, who's going to replace LeBron James as the best player in the league? I'd be like, well, Giannis could do it. Anthony Davis. You might see Ben Simmons if he learns how to shoot. I would have all these candidates. There's no candidate for the next great platform, I don't think. Do you see one out there?
No, because
it seems like now it's almost like their own little mini monopolies and there's not room for anyone else. But that's crazy to me. I mean, there should be another platform that challenges them.
I think this happens though, right? With I mean, we don't have that much history to draw on, but I think this happens with the internet in that it takes, things get really big, you know, like I think it would have been hard to envision in, I don't know, 1998 or 9 that like, you know, AOL was going to be sort of meaningless in a couple, you know, in a decade.
Maybe I'm right here.
Maybe not. Yeah, you know, but you probably don't access AOL by going to AOL.com.
No.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I think these things, you have these titans. I mean, that's the whole idea of like disruption, right? And then just like immediately is undercut, and you know something else pops up and is ascendant. To me, it doesn't feel that same way. Like you have the people laying in wait and training and waiting for their moment, and they're going to take it. It's just usually like, to like kind of tie it back to like those Parkland teens. It's just like somebody who comes up and they're just like, I reject the status quo. Here's my thing. Here's how it's going to happen, and just like throw it out into the universe. And I think that that's really hard to predict.
Well, the trick for disruptors is occasionally they don't become disruptive anymore, and because they're too big and too mainstream. And the key is to then buy another disruptor and add that disruptor to your mix. And
that's
you see,
Facebook,
like, if Facebook did not buy Instagram, what is Facebook 5 years from now?
It's really an interesting question.
I don't know what the fuck happens to that place. But that was like the AOL thing, right? AOL, instead of becoming the disruptor who then buys more disruptors to grow itself internally, it says, this is great, let's merge with Time Warner. And that leads to one of the biggest disasters we've had. Disney's a really good example of this. Disney makes the deal with Star Wars. Disney makes the deal with Marvel. Disney's moving and trying to do things. Even Disney with Miramax in the 1990s. Disney creatively has been able to bring disruptors into its circle and kind of keep the momentum going. And that's something like Facebook did it with Instagram, but that if they don't keep doing that, I think they're in a lot of trouble 10 years from now.
Well, the weird thing with those companies too, given how they've created changed the advertising industry and made billions and billions more than they can probably,
for now,
hold for now. But because of that, it's not like they even have to acquire anything anymore. Now it's like, like Instagram stories is just just Snapchat, and they just like took it. And like that's sort of like a thing
really smart and evil, Facebook, but it was smart.
It's a thing that Facebook gets kind of like, like shat on sometimes for, but it's also just it's good business.
By the way, Jay Leno did that to David Letterman. David Letterman was kicking Jay Leno's ass, and Jay Leno stole like the best 4 or 5 things about Letterman's show and just made it his show. People were mad about it for a month, and then they forgot.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's like, I'm just going to do the same show you're doing, but I'm on a better network.
That's totally how it works. And so that's what's going to be really interesting about Facebook's future is that, and Google and all these, like for now, they have a lot of this money. They have the ability to attract all this good talent. Like it's going to be, even if this upstart, really interesting new idea comes forward, like it can be cloned. We've seen it work. So,
by the way, I think it's a bad sign for the company I'm about to mention that we keep mentioning these platforms over and over and over again, and we have not mentioned them yet. Who do you think it is?
I don't know.
There's one big kahuna out there that should have been in this discussion and was not. Apple.
Well,
at least from a content standpoint, but Apple had a chance to basically own audio completely. Mm-hmm. To get into the content game in a big way. And I know they're going to try. This is now they're belatedly trying to get involved with content. But with the iPad, with iPhones, with going back to the iPod in the mid-2000s, Apple TV, they have all the makings to just dominate. And yet Netflix has taken a lot of their corner, at least visually. And then Spotify took some of their stuff music-wise, and what's Apple going to be? I don't know.
I mean, to some extent, you could say, right, if you look at the way that people are getting savaged right now, these companies, and I do think that will have an impact. Like right now, public approval on a lot of these platforms is pretty high. Like people still feel good about Facebook as a brand
because they use them in their everyday lives.
Right.
So as long as that happens, those companies win.
But I do think that there's going to be that's going to change to some degree if things don't change. But Apple's left out of that discussion. It's left out of the two of us talking and saying a lot of rough things, and that decision right now at this kind of moment of upheaval to just sort of be like, hey, we're a hardware company, we make these things, like you enjoy the phones, you enjoy these things, we make these products well, we're obsessive about engineering, this is what we do best, we've always done best.
Well, then why buy Beats? It's like it seems like Apple can't decide what it is.
I think,
I don't think any of these companies can really decide what they are. Twitter's the only one who's really said, this is what we are. We are there for immediacy.
Yeah.
We're there for self-promotion.
Yeah, live.
We want everyone to have the ability to open a Twitter account. We have the chance to change elections. We're overseas. People are overthrowing governments, and this is who we are, but we don't know what we're doing.
I think what's really interesting about that point is I'm not sure that any of them can really control that. They don't know what they want to be. It's like they kind of don't have a say in it almost to some degree.
Yeah.
Not to take all the agency away from multi-billion-dollar corporations, but it's tough. It's you put this tool out there, and then as we have been talking about, it's used and abused in a million unforeseeable ways, and then you're basically left playing catch up.
All right, we gotta go. Thanks to ZipRecruiter. My listeners can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. If you want to read more Charlie, go to BuzzFeed.com or just search for Charlie Warzel column archive, and all his stuff will come up. A lot of the stuff that we talked about in detail, and a lot of stuff about the information apocalypse, which is the most important thing going on right now. And you could also see some deep fakes of Charlie having Charlie in porn scenes, but it's not really him. So if you find those, now that hasn't happened yet. You'll know you're famous when
exactly
when that happens. But this was great. I'm glad we did this. I wanted to save a little bit, some meat on the bone for next time.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're back tomorrow. Stay tuned because what's becoming an annual thing, the Jimmy Kimmel Post-Oscars podcast. We're taping it tomorrow morning in his office, and then we're going to put it up right after it's done. Me and Tate are going there. Tate's going to take his annual picture with Jimmy. I hope Jimmy keeps hosting the Oscars. Me too. Yeah, because last year's podcast was really fun. Me, Jimmy, and Sal, so get ready for that tomorrow. Until then.